Okay, we are recording. I'm going to cover the syllabus, say a few things about the course, and then talk about Module 1. And while I'm doing that, Chastity, I will answer your questions. And I'm going to try to go through it quickly just because I don't want to waste waste your time, and because I'm always available. So if there's something I missed that anybody would like me to cover, you can always just request to meet me, and we'll talk about it. And speaking of which, Chastity, you will get 5 points of extra credit for being in this meeting. Anyone else watching this video, you can also get extra credit for watching this meeting, but you're going to need to do a few things. So grab something to write with, because what's going to happen most of the time for this video is I'm going to give you a random set of attendance words. And at the end of the video, once you're done watching it, you'll need to send me an email with those attendance words as proof that you watched the video. So before we get started, Chastity, do you have any questions in general, or do you want to wait until I maybe get to that particular part of the syllabus or the course?
Yeah, let's just dive in, and then if I have anything, I'll throw it at you.
Sounds good. All right. So the first word for attendance, let's say, is general. That word right there.
Got it.
Yeah, and Chastity, for you, you don't need to the words like that. Anybody watching the video?
Hey, you're cutting out there. It's hard. I didn't hear what you said after the word general.
Okay. I was just reminding you that since you are in this meeting, you don't have words. But anybody watching the video, that's the first word that they're going to have to send. When they send the email, that's the first word for attendance.
I can't. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
That's okay. I'd rather you. You still can't hear me?
I heard that.
Okay, good, good. Well, I'm glad. This is why I like it when someone else is on here, because it could be a glitch on my end, and I wouldn't know it until I've gone through the whole thing and then watched the recording. So I'm so glad you're here to tell me when you can't hear me. But anyway, first thing we're talking about is the syllabus. Let's jump into it. And that is, I'd say, one of your first assignments is to read the syllabus. And if you do read it, I will know if you read it, and that might not make sense, but trust me, there's a way I will know. And once you read the syllabus, you'll figure out what I'm talking about. But for now, I'll just leave it at that. So here's obviously the table of contents. Let's move forward. You and I have already met, at least virtually, so but my name is Vasilios Dianellos. I don't care what you call me, as long as it makes sense. So if you come up to my office and you say, "Hey, Professor Bob," that wouldn't make any sense. I wouldn't know who you're talking about, right? But anything that makes sense, like Professor V or Mr. D, whatever, it doesn't matter. And also with such a weird name, so don't get offended when you mispronounce it or misspell it. So don't worry about that. I'm not one of those people who gets picky. This is the phone number to my office. It's 304-766-3125. That number is forwarded to my cell phone. So if you need me in a hurry, that is one of the best ways to reach me. Speaking of which, if you email me, I strive to check my emails and reply to them and address them in the order in which they were received. So sometimes if I'm really busy, it might be a while before I get to your email. So again, if you need me in a hurry, one of the best things to do is call me or meet me online, like Chastity, like you are right now. But the thing about calling me, like I said, that is forwarded to my cell phone, so you can call any time of any day. I always turn my ringer off when I go to bed, so you're never going to disturb me. If you're studying and it's 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, and you have a question about something in the study guide, call me if you want. Most likely, I'll be asleep and I won't answer it. But if for some reason, who knows, that maybe I can't sleep and I'm awake, and if I get that phone call, I will take it. So yeah, call me anytime, any day. You will not disturb me. Hey, we've got somebody else here. Good. Jessica Starcher. Jessica, we have just started talking about the syllabus. We're going to go through the syllabus, and then we're going to go through Module 1, and that'll be it. And Jessica, since you're here, you're going to, for the most part, automatically get 5 points of extra credit. And anyone else watching the video, they have to jump through some hoops, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Anyway, so again, there's my name, there's my phone number, there's my email. This link is actually an old one. Like it says, subject to change. Well, it's already changed. So obviously, Jessica and Chastity, you have the correct link because here you are with me. But this one already went bust, and I had to update it to the one we're using right now. So I guess you can just ignore this part of the syllabus because it has already changed. If it might have to change again too, because sometimes these links just stop working. But if this link does stop working, I'll send you an email with the new link. But until then, the best place to find the link is right here. And I know I'm preaching to the choir for you too, because here you are. But whoops, this looks like I'm looking at the wrong course. Anyway, it's still basically the same. You're going to go to the announcements, go to Welcome to Biology, or excuse me, Introduction to Biology, and that's where you'll find it. Anyway, I'm glad I noticed that. I'm going to pull up the actual correct course. There we go. Yep, there we go. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, if you go to announcements, again, as I'm preaching the choir for you too, but this is the link that you would use to join me for these meetings, for my office hours, or if you want to drop in on the live stream for the lectures, this is the link to use. So any questions about the link? All right.
We're actually, I think this is the Bio 101, not the 108. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, 101 16 week. Did I click the wrong one again?
You did.
Let's see. Yep.
Okay. I took that one last semester.
Thanks. Well, the syllabus that we're looking at is correct. This is for 101. But yeah, let me go ahead and do that while I'm doing this. I apologize, everybody. Moodle is always changing too. So every time I think I'm used to it, it changes on me. 101, 203, 101, 200. There we go. Yeah, this is us. And thank you. And once again, I'm glad you guys are here because you guys are helping me do this. There we go. That's the one, right? Introduction to Bio. Yeah. So anyway, yes, there's the link. So any questions about the link? All right. These are my office hours. So every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm basically in the office from 9 to 10 a.m. And then also on Friday, it's extended to 12 p.m. I want to reiterate, this is just when you're guaranteed to find me in the office and online. That doesn't mean you can't meet me any other time outside of those times. It's just it's the easy way where you don't have to think, oh, I hope I can find him. No, this is exactly when you can find me. But I also try to stay online, not my office, but at least online like I am right now, usually every weekday between around 7 a.m. to around 4 p.m. usually. So if you ever need me, it wouldn't hurt to use this link and just drop in to see if I'm here because I very well might be. So again, office hours is when you're guaranteed to find me, but you're likely to find me anytime outside of office hours. And if you need to, send me an email and we can schedule a time to meet. I prefer meeting. Meeting is so good because I want you to learn things and I don't want you to be wondering what you need to do for this assignment or that assignment. I prefer you to just know to make things easier for you. So please use me as a resource. So any questions about office hours? Okay. Also, and it's funny I don't have it on there. Just so you guys know, my office number is H131. So if you need to meet me physically, you could come to Hamlin 131, and that's where I'll be. That's where you can find me. However, I would recommend meeting me online like we are right now because it's an online course, because almost everything that we would need to discuss would involve being online, right? So it would be helpful for us to be able to do what I'm doing now, which is to share my screen. Otherwise, it'll be you standing behind me at my desk while I show you something on my computer screen and you kind of breathing down my neck, which is awkward. So, yes, you can meet me in person, but I prefer online. So any questions about that? Okay. You can read this course description and the objectives. Actually, you should. I'm not actually going to talk about it. You'll kind of get the gist of the course descriptions and the objectives and the outcomes as we go through the course. But yeah, read about that. Let me know if you have any questions. And I basically summarized this in some of my announcement posts where I was just saying that the most important thing for this course is for you to be able to get a basic understanding of biology so you can basically think for yourself. Any questions about the course descriptions, objectives, or outcomes? All right. Next word for attendance. So for anybody watching the video, so not Jessica or Chastity, you guys are good. But for anybody watching this video, your next word for attendance is textbook. So that's the second word. You need to, at the end, when you're done watching the video, send the email with the whole list of words. And so far, there's been 2 of them. If you missed the first one, rewind the video so you can find it. Anyway, the textbook is right here. You can click on it. And I wish it would open in a different window, but it doesn't. But yeah, here it is. It's all online, which is amazing. I think having an online book is very handy, and it's
I don't
free.
mean to interrupt, but I missed the first word because I couldn't figure out how to get on. So do I need to go back and watch the video to get the first word?
No, because you're here live, you're good. So you don't need to do anything. I mean, at the end, I'll tell you what you need to do at the end, but you don't need to worry about the words. Those are only for people who are watching the video at a later date.
Okay.
Good question.
Can I ask about that as well? Like I said, I've taken your course before, and I've always created a Word document as we sat through the meetings, which I'm doing right now. Is that going to be different this semester? I don't need to do that as long as I attend the meeting.
Yeah, for now I'm just doing it to where if you're here, you don't need to. That might change later. But like you mentioned, you had this course last semester. So basically I'm pretty sure you're paying attention. And Jessica, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. But later in the semester I might change that. But you'll know because once we start the meeting, I'll say, by the way, things are different. Everybody's gonna need to write these down.
Okay.
So great question.
Yeah, I just and sometimes I refer back to these Word documents. So for my own
it wouldn't hurt.
sanity, I may just roll with it.
That's okay. I'm glad you're doing that. But anyway, yeah, there's the free textbook. Another great thing about the free textbook is, you could use this to make study guides, right? So you could click this, you start reading the book. You could just literally Control A, so that copies everything. Well, you won't want to do that. But anyway, you just highlight all this information. And this is the first time I think I've put this on a video. But anyway, highlight the whole page. What a pain, right? There we go. I've highlighted that entire page. Control C for copy. And then if you want to, you could go to Chat GPT and just paste it. Say, write quiz questions from this information, right? And then you just paste it and it'll write you some questions and that'll, help you study. Anyway, let's move forward. Any questions about the textbook? All right. So again, I want to make sure you are very aware of this. The textbook, this is a 100 level course. So I teach out of the textbook and I test out of the textbook. For the most part, all the questions from your exam are going to come from the textbook. That being said, you should also look at the PowerPoint slides, and I'll come back to that later and show you where those are. Because there are a few things that I teach differently from the textbook. And then those PowerPoints, I'll tell you hey, the textbook says this, but I'm telling you this, and this is what you need to know for the exam. So again, not just the textbook.
Exams be like the quizzes?
Yes. And I'll cover that here in a second. That's a great question.
Okay.
But yeah, they are definitely like the quizzes. All right. So are there any questions about the textbook? Again, it's free. It's online. If you wanted to, for some reason, you could order a printed version. But anyway, let's move forward. Let's talk about the grade distribution. The entire course is worth 1,000 points, which basically means, as you can see here for the grading scale, every 100 points is a letter grade, right? So 900 to 1,000 is an A, 800 to 899 is a B, anything lower than 599 is an F, so on and so forth. So this is what you're shooting for. The weekly discussions, they should be weekly. This course was designed to be an 8-week course, but someone messed something up. So we had to stretch it out to make it a 16-week course. So you have 2 weeks per discussion. We have 8 discussions and you have 2 weeks per discussion to do them. Each one of them is worth 25 points. So that comes out to 200 points total, which is 2 letter grades. Weekly discussions are important, especially for these online courses, because we don't generally get to interact with each other, and the students don't get to interact with each other either. So it's good for that. And I'll talk more about the discussions when we get there. Right now, I'm just talking about the grade value. Again, we also have quizzes. So that'll also be one every 2 weeks. There's 8 of them. They're worth 20 points apiece. So that's worth 160 points, which is almost 2 letter grades. And I will point out, as you can see, the quizzes are worth a little bit less than the discussions, because in my opinion, the discussions are more important. And honestly, they're a little bit harder than the quizzes. Therefore, if they're harder, I feel like you should get more points for them. And again, I'm just discussing the grades right now. We'll talk about quizzes later as we go down the document. There are 3 regular exams, one every 4 weeks. They are about 50 questions apiece. And I'll talk more about them as we go down the document. But for now, I just want to talk about their point value. They are worth 100 points apiece for a total of 300 points. So again, every regular exam is worth 100 points, and that is an entire letter grade. And then finally, at the end of the semester, you will have a comprehensive final exam, which is a little bit more than the regular 100 points. It's worth 104, so it's worth a little bit more than a letter grade. And then finally, you have 8 labs to do, one every 2 weeks. Each one of them is worth 25 points apiece. So that's a total of 200 points, which is 2 letter grades. So again, that is the grade distribution. As we move down the document, we'll talk about the discussions and the quizzes and the exams and the labs. But for now, that's just how much everything is worth. So are there any questions about how much everything is worth? All right. Moving forward. Let's talk about the weekly discussions. And I'm going to really go over this quickly because you can read it yourself, but also because I'm really going to talk more about the weekly discussions when we talk about this week's discussion, right? So once we're done talking about the syllabus, we'll jump into Module 1 and I'll actually talk about this week's discussion, at which point I'll reiterate some of the points that you can read here on your own. So definitely read this. Like I said, one of your first assignments is to read the syllabus. So yeah, read this. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I am just going to skip this for the most part because, like I said, I'm going to talk about the details of the weekly discussions once we talk specifically about the Module 1 discussion. I will say this. I am required to provide you with this rubric. You can use it if you want, and I kind of loosely follow this, but when I show you the actual discussion, I'll show you the rubric that you should be looking at because there's a different rubric for each module. And it's, in my opinion, a lot more simple than this rubric. It straight up says, you're going to lose points if you do this. You're going to lose this many points if you do that, so on and so forth. Yeah, so again, please read all that about the discussions. And like I said, I'll go into more details about that once we talk about the Module 1 discussion. Quizzes, let's talk about this. Like I said, there's 8 of them, so that's 1 every 2 weeks. And to answer, I guess that was Jessica's question, they are a lot like the exams in many ways. First of all, when you go over here, like let's look at quiz 1. It's yours. Yours is going to look a little bit different than mine because you're the student and I'm the professor. So obviously it's going to be slightly different. Like you probably don't have preview quiz, but I think there's a button right there where you would take the quiz. So this is how you'll take quizzes, but this is also how you will take exams, right? So you're going to come here, you're going to click on it, you're going to click a button. So familiarize yourself with how the quizzes work because that's exactly how the exams are going to go. Likewise, your quizzes are basically your study guides for the exams. And this is really important for Chastity because Chastity, this is different than it was in 108. I actually provided you with extra study guides for 108. Here, the quizzes are the study guides because the questions from the exam come from the quizzes. Almost every question in the exam was a question that was in a quiz that has usually been reworded. Now you'll notice that the quizzes only consist of 20 questions and the exams are about 50 questions. So you're probably like, well, how does that work? Because even if you had 2 quizzes per exam, which you do, that would only be 40 questions. But here's the thing. These quizzes come from a big, how do I put it? Like a pot of questions, if you will. So even though there's only 20 questions per quiz, I've written a lot more questions. So every time you take a quiz, you should be getting a different version of the quiz and you should be getting different questions. I hope that makes sense. So it will never be the same quiz if you retake it, right? You can take quiz 1 and then retake it the next day and you should get a different set of questions. And that's what I recommend doing to study for the exam. And I will point this out. The highest grade is the one that's recorded. So let's say you go
and retake the quizzes if you don't.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think you should retake the quiz. Let's say, for example, you go today and you take it and you get an 80%. And then tomorrow you go and you take it and you get a 100%. Well, there you go. Now your grade is 100. You get the full 20 points instead of 80%. Then you can keep taking it just to study it. And let's say you take it on Friday and you get a 25%, which is a horrible grade, right? But it won't affect your grade because whatever the highest grade you get, that's the one that's recorded. So you'll never mess up your grade by retaking the quiz. Does that make sense to everybody? Do you have any questions about that?
Love it.
Okay. So again, that's how I recommend studying for the exam is take and retake those quizzes. Also, for that matter, once the quiz is closed, if for some reason you never got 100%, let me know. We can meet online and I can give you all the correct answers to the quizzes so you can study the correct answers instead of the wrong ones. And also, as is the case with any assignment, and I'll be mentioning this a little bit later too, anytime you meet me online and let me give you feedback, one-on-one, you'll get at least a 5% boost to the grade of that assignment. So any questions about the quizzes? All right, labs. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we specifically talk about the Module 1 lab. But again, you have to turn in a lab once every 2 weeks. I recommend getting them done early for a few reasons. If you make mistakes, you can correct them before the due date. So the more, the earlier you turn it in, the more time you have to make your corrections. Another thing is I'm usually a little bit more lenient when I grade early stuff. One, because I want to reward the student for getting it done early. Two, if you got it done early, excuse me, let me rephrase that. If you turn it in closer to the due date, in my opinion, you've had longer to do it. Therefore, I should hold you to a higher standard. And three, to be completely honest with you, this kind of deters cheating. So if you turn in lab 1 tomorrow, you might have a question where it wasn't exactly correct, but I gave you credit for it anyway. But then later, after the lab is actually due and somebody turned it in towards the due date, I might mark that same answer incorrect for them. Because, well, again, focusing on the cheating thing, if somebody else, if students like to copy off of each other, they should know that, that might not work out for them.
So I
Anyway,
have a question about the labs. I had completed the lab and then I seen it. I have not submitted it yet, but I seen at the bottom for the extra credit. If I submit it, can I still go back and do the extra credit that connects to that lab, or do I have to do that when I submit the first time?
that's a good question. And remember that question because I want to pull up, once we talk about the Module 1 lab, I want to pull it up and talk and, show specifically the extra credit you're talking about before I answer
Okay.
that question. So it's a great question.
Okay.
So yeah, remember it, please.
Okay.
All right. So again, we'll come back to labs when we talked about Module 1 lab. The next word for attendance, again, if you're watching the video, you two are not required to do this because you're here, but if you're watching the video, the next word for attendance is tests. And anyway, we've already pretty much talked about this. You already know how much they're worth. I'll go ahead and I'll give you the new information, things I haven't said yet. Each one should be about 50 questions, right? And those questions, for the most part, are going to come from the study guides. So from the quizzes, right? So those are your study guides. You'll have 50 minutes to take about 50 questions. So that's not time. Like you need to prepare for those because the reason I have a time limit is because I want you to take a closed book exam. I don't want you looking things up. I don't want you using AI. I don't want you using your book or the internet. So 50 minutes to complete 50 questions, you don't really have enough time to take a closed book exam. On that note, if 50 minutes doesn't seem like it's long enough for you, if you meet me online like we are right now, and you share your screen like I am right now, and I can see you and I can hear you and I can ensure you're taking a closed book exam, I don't care how long it takes you to take the exam. You could take like 3 hours. Doesn't matter to me. So if you need more time, let me know and we can make that happen. And it'll sort of just be like any kind of situation, like a regular in-person course, like with you sitting in the classroom taking an exam with me in there. I'm not going to be sitting there staring at you the whole time, but I will be walking around, and looking at you and looking at your test occasionally. And that's what would happen if we were online. I'm not just going to sit there and watch you, but I'm going to be going around doing my own thing, at home or wherever I may be, and just occasionally look over at the screen and make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do. So any questions about the exams?
I guess this is a general question to all the assignments. But the whole 2 weeks per assignments is kind of new for me. So, I mean, like, if I don't get anything done by this Sunday, just hypothetically, I still have until the following Sunday to get it all done. Is that correct?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. I shouldn't say unfortunate, but it's supposed, like I said, it's supposed to be an 8-week course, but
Right.
everything's extended. So yes, that is true, with the exception of the discussion. And I was going to bring that up later, but I'll go ahead and say it now and then bring it up again later as well. For the discussion, your initial post is due this Sunday, and then
Okay.
your minimum of 2 replies is due next Sunday. So
Got
yeah,
it.
everything is due in every 2 weeks, other than discussion, which is the initial post is due the first week. Which brings me to, I'm pointing this out very quickly too. On your in some one of those announcements, I shared this document with you, due dates. So this is what I use to keep track of what's due for me. You can see, like, here's just stuff for me. Here's stuff for my in-person 101 class, and here's stuff for your class. So you can see it has exactly when everything is due. And when I get a chance, I'm actually going to put links in there. So you not only can you see it, but you can click it. Like, I've already done that for my in-person 101 class. They're like, oh, quiz 1 is due on January 26th. So they can click on it and it'll bring it to them. So I highly recommend you
I did not
utilize.
see that link. When did you share that?
Let's see. It's a good point. Let me make sure I did share it really quickly.
Yeah, I could have overlooked it because I'm just going to be honest. It's been totally overwhelming. I'm 43 years old and this is a lot.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's
And while
fine,
I'm pulling that
Jessica.
up,
Go ahead.
and while I'm pulling this up, I should point out, because like you said, it is overwhelming. I meant to say this at the beginning. In my mind, even though this isn't my goal, but the best way I can describe the first week of this class is a lot like boot camp. In some ways, boot camp in the military is the hardest part of the military. In some ways, not in all ways, because that bit of training, those few months of training, they've got to prepare you for your entire time in the military. That's what this week is. So yeah, it is a little bit overwhelming, and I apologize because I'm giving you so much information,
Oh, you're
because
fine.
I just want you to be able to hit the ground running. But it'll be
I
a lot
just feel like
easier.
that I might be missing something, so I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, good call, and I'm glad. And I'm looking. Weekly grades, weekly discussions, labs. Oh, I might not have. See, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's see, due dates. I didn't. See, very good. So
Okay.
I will share that sometime, probably today or tomorrow. Good point. All right, thank you.
Thank
Anything
you.
else?
No.
All right. Extra credit work. There's a document I've already shared. You should read that. Long story short, extra credit is not meant to be a game changer. I just want it to be able to, like, give you a little bit of a boost if you need one. This is for people who are, like, on the next, very close to the next letter grade. That's what I've designed extra credit work to be. And also, and you'll read this, the official policy is you will not be able to jump up by 2 letter grades, right? No matter how many extra credit points you get, because I'm putting a lot out there. I'm telling you, the policy is you will not jump up 2 letter grades due strictly to extra credit. Any questions about that? All right. So again, I already shared the document about extra credit right there. So you should definitely read it. It explains how the math works, just in case you're curious. And it also gives you a bunch of extra credit ideas. Late work. This is important. The official policy, as you can see here, is late work will not be accepted. And I have this as the official policy because sometimes I need to fall back on it. The unofficial policy is if you've missed an assignment, just go ahead and turn it in late. The sooner you turn it in, the more likely it is I'll be able to grade it. Because what happens is I prioritize new assignments, right? So if you turn in something late, I'm going to, and I look at my emails and I can see your email where I can see the email where you submitted something. I'm going to grade all the new stuff. And then once I'm caught up with the new stuff, then I go back and start grading old stuff in the order in which it was received. So it's very important you turn it in as early as you can. And again, it's very important for me to have this official policy because what always happens every semester, a handful of students will wait until the end of the semester and they're going to turn everything late in at once. And I literally just don't have enough time to grade everything because not only do I have a handful of students turning in a bunch of late work, but then there's still all the new work that I have to grade. So again, the official policy is it won't be accepted, but I'm telling you, go ahead and do it soon, and you might be okay. You guys are online, so you shouldn't really need any prior permission for everything. Like, you can't miss an exam unless you're going to be gone for a whole week, because the exams will be open for an entire week, for example. But just in case, if there is something that you know is going to come up, like you're going to travel or have a work meeting or whatever, just let me know, and we'll just plan ahead for anything where you're going to miss something. So any questions about late work? All right, expectations. This is pretty straightforward. You need to participate. Again, this is an online course, so there's not much physical participation you can do. Just do the assignments, basically. Definitely do this. If people did this, they would be okay. Students are expected to check the announcements daily. So what's going to happen, I'm go ahead and predict this now. Somehow people are going to completely ignore the fact that you have to use sources in your discussions. And I'm going to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And some students will go the entire course and never see me repeating that you have to use sources in your discussions, and they will continue to get zeros for their discussions. And that would have been solved had they checked the announcements, i.e. their emails, at least once a day. So everything I tell you today is not as important as this, because anything that's important that I'm telling you today, I will also share it via the announcements. So as long as you're checking your emails / announcements regularly, you'll be okay, because any important information you may miss from today will be included in the announcements. So yeah, make sure you do that daily. Any questions about that? All right. Again, like I already said earlier, you should definitely read the textbook. It says before coming to lecture. You guys are not required to come to lecture, but if you if you wanted to join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 8:50 online, or even in person if you want, feel free. But yeah, you would definitely want to read the textbook before you come in. And regardless, obviously, you're going to want to read the textbook before you do your quizzes and your exams. So any questions about that expectation? Okay. From here down, like I said, one of your first assignments is to read the syllabus. But I'm telling you, you can skip this part. I'm not worried about proctor testing. I'm required to put that in the syllabus. You can use this information if you want. But again, if you want a test that's proctored, I prefer you to just meet with me like we are right now. That's the easiest way, and it's free. So you can read all that if you want. And then here, this is the other part you need to know, the tentative course schedule. So it's pretty simple. Module 1 consists of 2 weeks. Module 2 consists of 2 weeks. But everything we do, you can see here, like which chapters we cover in the module, so on and so forth. And oh, look at this. This is old. I need to fix that. We're not going to have Thanksgiving this spring. I don't have that much pull in the federal government. So anyway, that's the tentative schedule. Any questions about the syllabus? The syllabus before we finally jump into Module 1? All right. So again, I want to remind you, read the syllabus. That's one of your first assignments. Let's jump into Module 1. First of all, you might not even know this, but there's different ways you can navigate your course. So if I click this button, that kind of gives me like little shortcuts. So let's go to Module 1. You can read the objectives yourself. I don't need to read that to you. Read them. Let me know if you have any questions. Chapter 1, here's the PowerPoint. Wait, no, excuse me. This is the textbook, if I remember correctly. Yep, that's the textbook. So read Chapter 1. That's where you can find it. Here's my PowerPoint. Again, I highly recommend watching these PowerPoints because some of the stuff is a little bit different from what I teach versus what's in the textbook. Also, if you look at the textbook, you'll see that there's some stuff where I'll straight up tell you, like, this will definitely be on the exam, or I'll say, hey, this definitely won't be on the exam, so you don't need to worry about it, right? So instead of just reading the textbook, I highly recommend looking at the PowerPoints, or better yet, you could, let's make sure I have this before I tell you this. I have videos of my lectures. Let's see. I think I have that on here. Join the meetings. Anyway, I don't want to waste your time looking at this, but there's a link that has all my lecture videos. If I haven't shared it with you, I will. It looks like this. 101 lectures. Yeah. So you can see here, like from fall, these are all my lectures from last semester. So you can watch those. And again, I highly recommend it because in those lectures, I do cover the textbook and I say, these are the things you need to know. These are the things you don't need to know. So I can kind of narrow things down for you if you watch that. So any questions about the PowerPoints or the textbook as far as Module 1 is concerned? All right. Really quickly, let's talk about the discussion. right off the bat, and again, this is such a huge deal. Students always mess this up, and I just wish there was something I could do more to make sure people understood this. You have to properly use sources in your discussions. Every single post, whether it be an initial post or a reply, you have to properly use your sources. I won't grade anything unless you properly use sources. One, properly using sources is a great thing to do if you're a college educated citizen, right? It's just good for communication. And on a more practical note, it helps me make sure that you're not using AI, because AI is notoriously bad for using sources. So if you do use AI, and I'm telling you you're not allowed, so you shouldn't, but if you do use AI, here's what you'd have to do, right? If you were to use AI and tell it, please include your sources, what you would have to do after it writes your post for you is you need to read that post and make sure that every single fact in that post has a source, right? And then you need to make sure it jives with what your source says, right? So your paper that AI wrote may say 25% of people died of COVID, and have a source, and then you might click that source, and it has absolutely nothing to do with COVID, or never said anything about 25%. That happens all the time. So I'm telling you, the easiest thing to do is to not use AI, right? It's really easy to not, to just write something and make sure your facts have a source, because unless you're just making facts up, you're going to have a source, right? So don't use AI. Um, you
On
need to
our first
properly.
week of discussions, if there are issues with it, I'm assuming you'll get back with us and tell us like what that you don't want us to do, or
Exactly. Yes, that's a great point that I was going to bring up later, but I'll go ahead and say it now. Yeah. So, generally speaking, as the semester goes on, I'm going to give less and less feedback, because I've learned from experience that a lot of students just don't care. So, I don't want to waste my time or your time. But during the first week, I will be providing a lot of feedback.
okay.
And I'll do it publicly. So, I won't say, it won't be a private. So, everybody will be able to read my feedback, because it's the first week and we're all learning. Right. So, I want you guys to learn from each other's mistakes and successes. So I
Okay.
will be replying to stuff. Yeah. And on a related note, so this week, if you haven't properly used the source, I'll reply and say, hey, you said this, but your source didn't say that. Can you please provide another source that does say what you said? That's what'll happen during the first week, or the first module. After that, again, if you write a paper that includes facts and there's no source to back them up, I'm just not going to grade it. It's just going to be an automatic 0 after the first week or the first module. Because again, if you're writing it yourself, there's absolutely no way you're just going to randomly come up with some fact that doesn't have a source, right? You're not going to be like 27% of people, or like I said earlier, 25% of people died of COVID, right? Where did you come up with that number, right? So it's a really easy thing to avoid as long as you're not using AI. So yeah,
Okay.
great question. Um, so you definitely should read this document that tells you how to properly use a source. Long story short, yeah, let's talk about it very quickly. It's basically an easy version of APA if you're familiar with it. Um, First of all, again, every post you have needs at least one non-textbook source. So even if you could somehow write something where you didn't include any facts, at least add one fact that wasn't from your textbook, so you can come up with a source to include. Any questions about that first part? All right. Second part. I've already said this earlier, so I'm going to say this very quickly. Every fact has to have a source, right? If you have a fact in your source, if you have a fact in your paper, you need to substantiate it with a source. One, again, that's just good practice. That's good communication. And two, again, that's one of the ways I combat AI, right? Because AI is very bad at using sources. So make sure every fact has a source. Any questions about that part? All right. Third, your source needs a link, a working link, right? So don't say, according to this book, and then not have a link for it, right? You need to have a working link to your source. Also, I'll say, while we're talking about links and sources, um, it has to be a free source, right? So if you have a subscription to National Geographic, you can't use that as a source because we can't read it. Now, I guess you could get creative and maybe take a screenshot of your source, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Ask me questions if you want to do that. But look, we need to be able to have access to your source. And on a similar note, you wouldn't want to use a book or a video as a source, because I don't have time to read an entire book or watch an entire video. But if you feel like you really must use a book or a video, then you need to be specific. Like you would say something like on page 38, in the third paragraph, and they give you really specific where you got your information from. Same with a video, right? So at 5 minutes in and 38 seconds, the narrator said this, right? You had to be very specific. Does that make sense? You guys have any questions about needing a clickable link to your source? All right. Actually, one more thing. Sorry, one more thing about that before I move forward. Another thing you want to do is use the specific website. So let's say, for example, I'll use COVID for this is the example again. If you say the CDC says this, that, and the other thing about COVID, don't give me the website to the CDC's homepage. Give me the specific link to the specific website that you used. So any questions about that third part? All right. This one, and I'm a little bit less stringent. No, I don't even want to say that. But anyway, you have to make it obvious how you use your source. So what you don't want to do is just like write your entire paper and then just throw a source at the bottom. Like you need to put in your writing something like according to my source, right? Or in this case, I made the statement and then in parentheses put the source. Or in this case, I made the statement and then put the number one, because that's the first source, right? So anyway, you somehow you need to make it obvious how you use your source. And honestly, my favorite way is to do this, where you just include a link in the text itself. And if you don't know how to do that, I'll show you here in a second, but I'll come back to that. So anyway, any questions about needing to make it obvious how you use your source? All right. This is pretty big. If you directly quote your source, you have to use quotation marks. Otherwise, that's plagiarism, right? Otherwise, you're copying. So and then it's okay. If you want to directly use the words from your source, feel free. I don't grade this based on the length of your papers or your post or anything like that. So feel free to just copy it, paste it, just make sure you use quotation marks. Otherwise, you're claiming that's your work, in which case you would just get a 0. So any questions about using quotation marks? All right. Then again, this is an example. It might seem like this is correct according to my source, blah, 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 right? But in this particular example, this was taken verbatim from the source. So we needed those quotation marks. Anyway, any questions about quotation marks? All right. One thing you will not lose points for, but still you should strive to do is make sure your source is reputable. And you can use this and you can check if you want. You can search for a certain source and it'll tell you, how reputable it is. But again, you won't lose credit. You won't lose points if you use a garbage source. It'll just turn into a learning moment where I'll say, hey, good job. But just so you know, that source is pretty biased towards this or towards that. So any questions about using reputable sources? All right. And on a similar note, again, this is something you wouldn't necessarily lose points for. You definitely wouldn't lose points for this because I wouldn't even know. But everything you write should make sense to you. So if you're writing, if you do a lot of copying and pasting and using quotes like we talked about earlier, if what is in your paper doesn't make sense to you, you shouldn't include it, right? Your paper should make sense to you. This is more for my 101 students who have to write papers as opposed to discussions. But yeah, make sure something makes sense to you. If you write something and you include a word and you don't know what it means, look it up, right? Make sure you understand what it means. Anyway, you have access to this document. You should read it, including this, how not to use the source. I'll give you some examples so you can read that. But any questions about how to properly use sources? All right, then let's look at, finally, the meat and potatoes. We might be able to get out of here in an hour. That would be nice. Let's talk about the Module 1 discussion. First of all, they'll all look like this. You'll come here and it won't necessarily give you any information, so you have to click it to get the prompt. And here it is. So this is for Module 1. All modules will include this, so you feel free to just ignore this moving forward because, again, it's not going to change. It's stuff I've already told you. You need at least 3 posts per discussion. And I say at least because if you didn't get the full 25 points, then do more than 2 replies, right? Just keep turning in replies until you get the full 25 points. Like I said, the first post is due by the first Sunday of the module. Your 2 responses are due by the second Sunday of the module. And again, I was required to include this discussion rubric. But again, I'm telling you, don't worry about that one. I'll show you the better rubric here in a second. This is the part that's different for every module, starting from under where it says prompt. Read this entire document before you start. For example, the grading rubric is found towards the bottom, which we're about to talk about. You can read this if you want. This is just kind of like an introduction to the theme of this this module's discussion. And this is very important for Chastity because she's had my 108 class, and discussions are very much different in this course. In this course, you just have a ton of options. Like so, for example, let's look at it. Answer at least 2 of the following bullet points indicating which ones you are answering. Do not forget to properly use sources. So let's see. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 things to choose from, right? So choose any of these bullet points, any 2 of them, and just follow the directions. And I will say there's a common theme for a lot of them. A lot of these discussions require you to talk about a concept in your textbook. Like, let's look at this one, and then we'll just move forward. Explain what science is and how it differs from other ways of understanding the world using a source other than your textbook. Then describe how that explanation is similar to or different from your textbook. Make sure to quote your source and your textbook directly. So again, this will be a common theme throughout the semester. All you need to do for most of these is pick a concept, copy it from your textbook, paste it. Don't forget your quotation marks, right? Hey, boom, this is what the textbook says. Then you could use a source, right? And you say, again, using quotation marks, boom, this is what my source says. And then you just go on and in your own words, just discuss how what the textbook says is different than or similar to or different than what your source says. Does that make sense to everybody? You guys good on that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, and again, here's an example, and this is embedded in every single module's discussion post. So you can read this as an example. And again, long story short, according to the textbook, and then I quoted the textbook, and then I said, according to this source, and then I quoted the source, and then I go on to explain, right? How are they similar? How are they different? Comparing and contrasting what the textbook says to what your source says, and that's mostly what the modules, most of the discussions are going to be. So any questions about your initial posts so far? All right. So again, that's your initial post. Yep, that's all information that I've already said. Then you're going to want your replies. Here we go. Read your classmates' posts carefully and think about how you can add to their discussion. Reply to at least 2 of your classmates' posts. Your replies must add to the discussion by providing a different perspective. Provide a different perspective by providing questions or by providing additional information. Be sure to use your own words and cite your sources. Read this for an example. So yeah, please read this. I'm not going to waste your time right now reading it to you, but these are just great examples of like, here's an initial post and here's a reply, right? So my suggestion, just, long story short, is when you're replying to a classmate, take what they said, look at their source. And then the easiest thing to do, in my opinion, is like, hey, I see that you said, or your source says this. I looked it up, and according to this source, it says this. And then it's basically like your initial post where you're saying, your source says this, my source says this, and then compare and contrast the 2. Here's how they're the same. Here's how they're different. If you just stick with that, you should be okay for your replies. Anyway, so any questions so far about the replies? All right. So you can read all this. This gives you all the information you might need. Tips for success. You can read that yourself. Here's the rubric I was talking about. If you keep scrolling down right here, this will tell you exactly how you will lose points. If you have errors, you'll lose 1 point per error. If you use emotion rather than logic, basically, if you just start using insults and things like that, you can read that if you want, but it's common sense. And then, of course, I won't grade anything that doesn't properly use a reference, right? And same thing with your responses. You'll lose points for errors. You lose points if you use emotion rather than logic, which has actually never happened since I put that in the rubric. And then, of course, I won't grade anything unless you properly use the source. And then finally, I'll put this for every module in Chastity. This is the same as module 108, I want feedback, right? So if you want to, you go here, add a discussion topic, and put extra credit. I don't know, extra credit. Whoops. I don't know, discussion one, however you want to name it, right? But you want to start a new discussion topic and then just write and give me feedback. And what I mean by feedback is you could say, what were some of the good things about that discussion prompt? What were some of the bad things about the discussion prompt? How could I make it better? How could I make it completely different, right? If you could come up and when you're looking at this discussion prompt, right, I've got these 9 bullet points for you to choose from. If you could think of another bullet point, lay it on me, right? And the more useful your extra credit is, your feedback is, the more points you'll get.
But
So
if you've already, I'm sorry.
What's that?
If you've already received 25 points for that discussion, then you don't. The extra credit only goes towards that discussion. Is that correct?
Yep, good point. I'm glad you asked that. Yeah, so the maximum points you can get for any one discussion is 25 points. So if you got the full 25 points and you leave feedback, it's not going to affect your grade. But I would still really, really appreciate it, because
Sure.
I'm here to teach, and you guys are the students. So I want to know. I want your feedback. So any questions about Module 1 discussion specifically, or discussions in general? All right. I will say one more thing too, and I'm going to keep saying this. I'm going to beat a dead horse. Please, if you can, before you submit your post, like after you write it and before you submit it, take time, like 5 minutes out of your day, and meet me online if you can, and let me look it over. Let me quickly read it, and I can say, oh, you got to watch out. I can't grade it because of this. Or don't forget this, right? I can guide you. It would be really quick, and I can tell you how you can improve your post, or even if I can accept it.
So our discussion, like now I have mine, I just have not added it yet. So can I just email you that and then have you look at it before I upload it? Is that what you're saying?
How do I put it? If we have to do email, then yes, it would be better and quicker and easier and more effective and clearer if we just meet like we are right now. And I can literally just read it, right in front of you and just verbally tell you, this, and this.
Okay.
Because honestly,
how would I show it to you? Like if we was meeting like this, how would I end up just like showing it to you?
Oh, good question. And I would explain that when the time came. But if you look down here at the but you see this button right here.
Yes.
You hit the present button, and then you can just show it that way. Or for that matter, since you talked about email, you could email me first. I'm like, hey, can you meet me at this time? And I'm like, yep. And then, include in the email, you could have your post, and then I can pull it up and show it on my end. So either way.
Okay.
All right. So yes, for the discussions, I highly recommend that. Please let me help you. It'll save you a lot of time. It'll save me a lot of time. Like perfect assignments are so much easier to grade because it's, you just get all the points, and then I don't have to give you any feedback. So yeah, please take me up on that if you can. Anyway, that is it then for the discussions. And then we'll just talk really quickly about the lab, and then we'll be done. So any last questions about the Module 1 discussion? All right, Lab 1. Let's look at this very quickly. So all labs will look like this. When you click on that, it'll bring you to this page. And really the only thing you need is this right here, right? So the beginning or the top of these things, for each module, it'll have this little link to a new worksheet. That's what you need. You can read all this. Actually, I recommend you reading this at least the first time. But then after all the other modules, you don't need to worry about reading this because it's all the same for every module. But all these videos give you feedback and things you might need to know that'll help you with your labs. But yeah, this is all you need. So for every module, you're going to click on this, and it's going to bring you to the document. The document, this is the master document, so you don't have editing access to it. So what you need to do is make yourself a copy. And everything I'm about to tell you is right here. So even though if you forget what I'm about to tell you, or you can always refer back to it, because at the top of every lab document is these instructions that show you exactly what I'm about to show you. So anyway, what you're going to need to do is make yourself a copy. So you go over here to File, Make a Copy. Name it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Once you make yourself a copy, it's your copy. You can do whatever you want to it. So it doesn't matter what you name it. I recommend this if you can, if it gives you the option, make sure you click copy comments and suggestions. And then that's it. Then you make yourself a copy. Now, then what you'll do is you go through and you'll do the lab, right? You'll answer all the questions. That's extra credit. We'll talk about that later. Fill out all the tables, answer all the questions. And then when you're done and you're ready to submit it, you go to File, Download. You're going to download it as a PDF. Make sure you download it as a PDF. I'll talk about that later in the semester, but please make sure it's a PDF. And then once you have downloaded the PDF, then you go to here. And again, yours will look different because you're a student, but somewhere at the bottom, you should have like a submit button. I don't, because I can't submit anything, but that's where you'll do it. So that's the general idea of how to do labs in general, not specifically, not just a module 1 lab, but labs in general. That's how you'll do them. So any questions on how to do them in general before we specifically talk about lab 1? Okay. So it's almost 11. I've almost had you guys here for an hour. So I'm going to try to go through this quickly, which is a good time for me to say, when you do these labs, I know it's an online class, but that doesn't mean you have to do them on your own. I am more than willing to sit here online with you and either walk you through, like read the introduction and talk about it. I can do that if you want, or I can just sit there quietly while you're doing it. And then you can just say, as you get to something, hey, I was reading this paragraph. I didn't quite understand what you're trying to say. Can you explain it? Or, I was reading this question and I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Can you please explain it? Right. So feel free to take me up on that, right? I can help you do these exams, either actively help you or just sit in the background just in case you happen to need me. But anyway, really quickly, the main purpose of this lab is to introduce you to basically experiments, graphing and hypothesis testing. So there's a lot of stuff in here that talks about the scientific method. You should definitely read this, become very familiar with it. Let me know after you read it if you have any questions. One big theme that you'll see throughout the semester is you'll need to formulate hypotheses, which is a tentative answer to a question that you can test. And then based on that those hypotheses, you'll come up with predictions. And a prediction is an if-then statement that basically describes how you're going to test a hypothesis. So for example, last night, my kids didn't sleep well, right? That was my observation. So then the question is, what is it? What happened last night? Why didn't my kids sleep well? It was an extremely bad night. What happened? A hypothesis would be, well, I don't want to dig too deep into this, but I could say, I hypothesize that they didn't sleep well last night because it was a full moon, right? So then to come up with predictions, multiple predictions, different ways I could test that hypothesis, right? Prediction 1 could be, if I pay attention to the way my children sleep for the next month, then I will find their sleep pattern will be normal other than for the next full moon, in which case it will be, they'll sleep less, right? Whatever it is. The point is you come up with an if-then statement that talks about how to test your hypothesis. But anyway, all that information is here. Read about it. I'm not going to waste your time on it right now. But again, let me know if you need help. Also, I want to point out, again, that's really what this exam is, this lab is about. It's all about experimenting, graphing, hypothesis testing. Goldfish is completely unimportant, right? It just so happens that this is the simple experiment that you're doing to familiarize yourself with the scientific process. Goldfish are not important. It doesn't matter. It just, this so happens that's what we're using. So any questions so far? All right, very quickly, this is to do the actual experiment. You're going to use, open this link. You're going to go to a website, and you're going to use this website to fill out, excuse me, and we're almost done, guys. I'm sorry. We're going to use this website to fill out, where you at? This table, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to put this goldfish in different temperatures, and you're going to count how many times they breathe per 30 seconds. So, excuse me, why is this not closing? Let me, good. I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, while I'm trying to fix this, good grief. While I'm trying to fix this, I will tell you, oh man, I'm so sorry. The next word for attendance is goldfish. Okay. Good grief. Guys, I'm so sorry. I might not be able to go through this one. There we go. Okay. So anyway, you're going to take the temperature, right? So let's say this one's 20 degrees, right? 20 degrees Celsius. So you go over here, and trust me, I'm not going to waste your time and do this through the whole thing. I'm just going to do this for a little bit. So 20 degrees Celsius, that falls under this category. So I would write 20 right there. And then I would need to know how many times it breathed in 30 seconds. So again, I go back to the website and I count, right? You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I do that for 30 seconds. You can use this stopwatch for your 30 seconds, or you could use your cell phone, whatever it is. For 30 seconds, you're going to count how many times it breathes. And then you're going to put it, oh man, this is really annoying. Put how many times it breathes right there, right? So at 20 degrees, it breathed 50 times in 30 seconds, right? Then you go to the next website once you're done with that one, and you'll see, all right, I don't know, 12 degrees Celsius. So you'll do the same thing for 12 degrees Celsius. You write the temperature, count the number of breaths, then you'll go to the next one, and you're going to fight with these ads. Go to the next one, right? Then you're doing the same thing for, I don't know, 5 degrees Celsius. You write that information in the table. You go again. You do the same thing for, I don't know, 25 degrees Celsius. Count the number of breaths, write it in the table. Go to the next page again. 30 degrees Celsius. Count the number of breaths, write it in the table. Go to the next page. And at that point, you'll have done all this. You'll have already filled all this out. This is the information that you need to fill out from the experiment that you did. And then you need to have this data, right? And this data right here is going to come from this right here. So take this information and put it into this column. You guys good so far? Does that make sense? Take the silence as a yes. Good. Okay. And then this information I've already given to you, so you don't have to worry about it. It's already there. Then you'll need to do an average. I've already have instructions on how to do an average, so I'm not going to waste your time explaining it right now. But if you need help, let me know. So you're going to average these numbers to get this number, right? You're going to average these numbers to get this number. That's all you have to do. And again, let me know if you need help. Then once you're done with that and you filled out your entire table, you're going to make a graph. If you don't know how to make a graph, again, let me help you. But there are instructions and videos embedded in here that show you how to do it. But again, read that. Let me know if you need help. I will say this as a hint. In this course, you're going to be doing a lot of graphs. A lot of them will be bar graphs. And for every single bar graph you make, this is a little, like I said, a little hint for you. The bars should always go up and down, not left and right. You always lose at least 1 point if your bars are going left and right. I know it's picky, but just make sure your bars are going up and down, not side to side. And I would ask if you have any questions about, well, no, go ahead. Do you guys have any questions about graphing? Okay.
I
So the
watched
final
the
thing.
video and it was extremely helpful. I wouldn't have had a clue how to do it had I not watched that video. I'll be honest.
Okay, good. Yeah. So yeah, watch that video. And again, like I said, let me know if you need help. I'm here to help you. The last thing I'll say about graphing is your graph should make sense to anybody, even on its own. So if you were to make a graph about this data and show it to your Uncle Joe, and he's never seen this lab, and you're not even showing him the lab, you're only showing him the graph, there should be enough information on the graph where he knows exactly what's on there, right? So for example, you don't want your title to be lab 1 graph, right? That doesn't describe the data in the graph, it describes the lab, right? So graphs should make sense to anybody reading them, even if they've never seen, the rest of the lab itself, for example. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, because graphs, the purpose of a graph is to tell the story of your data. Anyway, really quickly, I mentioned this before. Like I said, to fill out this data, right, you're going to need that information comes at the end of the website, which is right here. Likewise, you need to take a screenshot of this when you do the exam, when you do the lab, because this proves to me that you went through every single one of the steps and you got to the last step. If you don't know how to do a screenshot, again, the information is included in that. This will show you how to do it. Watch that. Let me know if you need help. But yes, you need to use that screenshot and you need to insert it here because that is proof that you went through the experiment. And that is a common theme throughout this course. You're going to need to be taking a lot of screenshots and inserting them into your document as proof that you did a virtual experiment. So any questions about the screenshot thing? All right. Another common theme you're going to see this semester is I'm going to have you repeat your hypothesis. I'm going to have you tell me if it was correct or not, and I'm going to have you repeat your results. And I know it's repetitive, and you can read this. This is basically what I'm about to tell you, but it's all for a reason, right? So yes, I can look back and see what your hypothesis was, right? I can see your answer to this, and then I can look at your data and determine if your hypothesis was correct or not. But it's not, I don't need to do that. You need to do that. You need to be able to look at data and determine if your hypothesis is correct or not. This is a big thing I've seen on social media. People are becoming stupid. They don't have the ability to look at data and draw conclusions. So yes, very often I'm going to ask you to repeat yourself. My hypothesis was this. It was incorrect because what actually happened was that. So on and so forth. So any questions about that? All right, this is pretty straightforward. I'm not going to go through this whole thing with you because I don't want to waste your time. And then at the end, this is another common theme. You're definitely going to want to type your name in this box. That indicates that you did it yourself. You didn't copy from anybody. Make sure you save it as a PDF before you upload it, blah, 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 all that stuff. And then you'll see here at the bottom, this is the common theme too. At the bottom of every lab is where you can add, I want feedback, right? So give me some feedback and let me know how I can improve things. And you'll just fill that out before you upload the document. And those points will be added to your lab grade, assuming you didn't get full credit. So there is a possibility that you'll do this extra credit and it might not even get applied because you will have gotten full credit for the lab. But again, I really appreciate your feedback. So please do it if you can. So I remember, Jessica, I think you had a question about labs and extra credit. Did I address it?
Yes. The extra credit there at the end of the lab, does it have to be completed whenever we submit the lab, or can you go back and do that later?
The easy answer is yes. That should be, you should already do this
Okay.
before you submit it.
Okay.
But technically, like let's say you turn in a lab and you didn't get full credit, and now all of a sudden you want your extra credit. Yeah, technically you could then take this document, fill out that extra credit, download it as a PDF again, and then upload it again.
Okay.
Yeah, you could do that. Which brings me really quickly. I'm so glad you asked because it reminded me of something I forgot to tell you. One of the reasons I have you guys doing these on Google Docs as opposed to like a Word document that you could download is because it's online now. So let's say you start working on a lab on Monday and your house blows up on Tuesday, so you lose your computer. But all you have to do is go to another computer. You go over here once you sign into your Google account. You go to Google Drive, and you can find the document you've been working on, right? So everything you've done is saved on Google Drive. Or more specifically, to address what you're asking, Jessica, let's say you did the lab, you didn't get full credit, so now you want to do full credit or do the extra credit. You don't have to start over. Again, you can go to your Google your Google Drive, open up, the lab that you just did, and then edit it, download it again, and re-upload it. So any questions about that?
No.
Okay. You can only upload one document at a time. So if you've already uploaded one document and now you want to upload it again, either A, because you have extra credit like you asked, or B, you didn't get full credit, but you want to correct your mistakes, you'll need to delete the old file first. And this video shows you how to do that. So I'm not going to waste your time showing you because that will show you how to do it. So that's it for the lab, as long as you guys don't have any questions. And the quiz is straightforward. We already talked about quizzes in general. You just go here. Mine says preview quiz, but yours will say take quiz or something like that. Just do it. There's no reason you shouldn't get full credit because they're not timed. They're open book, and you can take them as many times as you want. So just keep going and keep going and keep going until you get full credit. And then keep going after that too, because it'll help you prepare for the exam. Whew. So are there any questions about anything in general? Because at this point, I think we are done.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, so Chastity and Jessica, if you could please, so I have a reminder and a paper trail, send me an email. Says, hey, I was in the meeting with you. I'm claiming my 5 points of extra credit. And everyone else, now that the video is done, my last word for attendance will be, let's say, telephone, because that's kind of what it looks like right there. And then, and this doesn't necessarily not for Chastity or Jessica, but you guys can get even more extra credit if you do this. For those of you watching the video, what you have to do in addition to those attendance words is send at least one question from everything I just covered, right? Something that kind of shows that you were paying attention. So yeah, ask a question. Even if you think you understood everything, just come up with a question just to confirm that you understood everything. So I guess that's it. You two don't have any questions, right?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, if you want to, I'll see you this time next week. Otherwise, you guys have this time 2 weeks from now. Now that I think about it, we don't need to meet every week because this, again, I'm used to this being an 8-week course, but they stretched it out to 16. So that's yet another thing I need to update everybody with. But all right, you guys have a good module, and please let me help you if you need it. I'll be online. I'm here to help.
Okay, I would like to share to you my discussion. So do you want me to send you an email, or how can I